And breaking tonight, a nation taking to the streets, calling for justice and demanding change in the wake of George Floyd's death. Protests turning dangerous on the streets of Philadelphia. Several buildings and cars set on fire. Officers on the streets in riot gear telling crowds to go home.
A strong police presence tonight in Atlanta, where several businesses were damaged last night. Video this evening showing some protesters being arrested as law enforcement is seen blocking some of the roads there.
And right here in Houston, police marching with protesters in an attempt to keep the peace. Hundreds gathering today, marching from Emancipation Park to downtown and back.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jonathan Martinez.
And I'm Sion Rhodes. Those rallies continue here in Houston, where George Floyd was born and raised. City leaders promising tonight they will be ready for any what they call unruly behavior.
And out in Minnesota, where all of this began, the governor vowing tonight will be different. We do have live team coverage from the Bayou City to the Twin Cities following the protests. But first, we want to give you the latest headlines in the response to Floyd's death, and the demonstrations that followed. Curfews are now in place in several cities, including Minneapolis, Chicago, Seattle, and L.A.
Here in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott officially activating the National Guard tonight. As for the investigation into Floyd's death, the family's attorney says they will be getting an independent autopsy. Meanwhile, here at home, Mayor Sylvester Turner announcing today that Floyd's body will be brought back to Houston as soon as it's released. We begin our coverage tonight with Channel 2's Chris Gutierrez, who is live in Minneapolis for us. Chris?
Sion and Jonathan, good evening from downtown Minneapolis tonight, where you can see it looks more like a ghost town tonight. It's been this way virtually all day. Many businesses in this area literally boarded up, and they did not come into work today. But I wanted to show you this. We're just feet away from a police precinct, and look at that. They have literally fortified this precinct by stacking concrete blocks, one on top of the other. This after another precinct we know came under attack and was literally set on fire in recent days as these protests continue to escalate. Now we want to take a look at this video here. This is aerial footage from just a short time ago, less than an hour ago, and you can see that police were actually deploying tear gas to keep those protesters at bay tonight. You remember that the governor of the state of Minnesota made it very clear that he was deploying 4,100 officers, state troopers, and National Guard soldiers to this area to make sure that he could keep the peace tonight. So that's what we're seeing right here. Back in Houston, we want to continue our live team coverage right now with live coverage from our Brittany Jeffers. She's live there in the 3rd Ward. Again, as you mentioned, where George Floyd grew up. Let's get to you now, Brittany, and walk us through, because from what I understand, the demonstration there is much smaller and more peaceful than last night. Brittany, good evening.
Yeah, good evening to you, Chris. And we do want to mention that today city leaders reiterated over and over again that they did support the protesters' right to peacefully march, but they said that they were not going to tolerate any kind of criminal misconduct in the city. And as you mentioned, that group gathered here near Emancipation Park. I spoke with Chief Art Acevedo, and he says that original group that met here and that marched down to City Hall was very peaceful, but we do want to note that it appears that that group has split off, and there are some who are still marching tonight. Tonight, as protesters march from Emancipation Park to City Hall and then back to the park, Houston police were there, lining the streets and the steps of City Hall all along the route. A heavier presence felt tonight after a peaceful protest for George Floyd took a turn on Friday. Houston police say 16 of their cars were damaged, 8 officers injured, and 137 people arrested. The mayor says he respects the right to protest, but doesn't want the focus of George Floyd to be lost in destruction. To keep residents safe tonight and in the coming days, HPD is currently in full mobilization and has activated OEM. HPD Police Chief Art Acevedo says that the department supports the marches as long as it's constructive. And while some protesters say they are marching because they're frustrated with police brutality.
We have a history of working with our activists to help them lift up their voices in a constructive manner instead of a destructive manner, that we will march with them until the saints come marching home, that we will march with them until we can march no more, and that we will stand with them in terms of keeping them safe and helping them exercise their First Amendment rights.
All we want is to be equal. That's all we want. We're all the same. And we can all be someone if we just try to. And we can't change until everybody else changes.
And Chief Acevedo tells me that to his knowledge at this point, he doesn't believe that there have been any arrests tonight. Live here near Emancipation Park, I'm Brittany Jeffers, KPRC, Channel 2 News.
Brittany, thank you. Again, law enforcement stressing they want the demonstrations to remain peaceful there back home in Houston. Thank you for that. Our live team coverage continues now with Hannah McKenzie. Hannah, you actually were with demonstrators as they marched through the downtown area today. Good evening to you.
Good evening. Yeah, I've been marching for hours now. The march just pausing temporarily here on Simons and Scott Street. I wasn't sure if we were heading to Jack Yates High School because that's where George Floyd graduated from, but I asked some of the protesters here, I'm just not sure where they're heading. This march has been pretty chaotic for the last few hours. It's been very, very chaotic for the last few hours, walking through the downtown streets of Houston and then also running at times. They've been trying to get on the highways. Police officers are stopping them. They're throwing water, that kind of thing. We've got police, HPD along, making sure that the peace continues. There have been scuffles along the way, but so far, nothing too crazy. They're throwing it back to you guys.
Hannah, thank you for that. Stay safe, please, Hannah, there in Houston. Back live here in Minneapolis, we have brand new video just into our newsroom. Take a look. You can see this is a ground shot now of demonstrators, again, with the tear gas against law enforcement. Again, these protests, I should make it very, very clear, are much smaller, at least at this point in the evening, than we have seen the past four. This will be the fifth night of unrest here in the city of Minneapolis. But again, live pictures, ground pictures from the area there. That is about 4 miles from where we are tonight. We also want to show you this because this comes in stark contrast to what we're seeing tonight. During the day, we made our way over to East 38th and Chicago Avenue. That is the scene of where George Floyd was killed. And you can see on the side of the convenience store, there is a huge mural in his honor. And there's also flowers scattered throughout the intersection there. This, again, just steps away from the convenience store where, according to the criminal complaint, George Floyd is accused of passing a fake $20 bill, which is, again, as we know now, led to his very untimely and horrific death that we've all seen in that viral video. Again, that's the scene here in Minneapolis tonight. We're going to send it back to you in Houston. Again, one of the things that sticks with me, Jonathan and Sion, is just this building here behind me. When you have a police precinct that is literally fortified by stacking concrete blocks one on top of the other, it just gives you a better sense and magnitude of what they're facing out here in the greater Minneapolis area. Again, tonight we know 4,100 both state troopers, police officers here in the city, and also National Guard soldiers are on the streets deployed right now. They will get more if they need it. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Chris, thanks a lot for that.